we got our 220 grit sandpaper on there. Just a little helpful tip. A lot of you already know this, but for some of you who might not be beginning in woodworking, it's important to line up these holes with the holes that are here in the sanding disc or platen or whatever you want to call it. Because when you turn the dust collection on, the air will suck the dust through these holes, and it'll help to keep your sandpaper from clogging that much quicker. What you also can do is have one of these, you've seen me use these several times, one of these rubber sticks, and as it's spinning you can just kind of go from center gently, you know, you don't even have to push down on it, but just gently from center out, and you'll see the whatever's clogged in there, you'll see it pretty much disappear. Alright, so I'm going to get the dust collection back on. We're going to sand this down to the 220. Alright, let's begin. Let the sander do the work. Alright, we're going to continue with the next step, which I think I started getting ahead of myself. Before we glue the front and back drawer sides on, we need to sand the inside just a little bit, just to take out any of the little rough marks there and just kind of make it a little smoother inside, so that it doesn't feel that bit of a texture that's left over from the bandsaw. So what I've done here is I've rigged up a little fence using pretty much a straight steel edge with one of my diamond sharpening stones, and I've pretty much lined it up equally, and this way I have a little fence that I can run this back and forth, put a little pressure forward here, but generally to keep it kind of straight, so this way my hand isn't naturally trying to do any rocking motion or whatever. It's not right tight up against here, pushing it so that I'm kind of fighting with the sandpaper. This will allow me to come in and just kind of take nibbling cuts with the sandpaper, for lack of a better term. So I'm going to turn this on. We're going to get this to sanding. I'm going to put my get my dust mask on and start up my shop vac that I've got connected here for some a little bit of dust control, and we'll get started from there. So here we go. Flip it end for end to get a little bit of evenness out of it. Getting there. I'm going to take my rubber stick here just to clean off the sandpaper with all the sawdust that's built up in there. Just clean that off. You can see the difference. It's been loaded up with a lot of sawdust. So if I want my sandpaper to cut better and more efficiently, I'm going to need to keep cleaning the sandpaper belt. Move on to the next piece. It doesn't take too much. We don't need it perfect, but we do want it to be a little bit more consistent. Want that cleaned up a little bit from all that rubber. sit flush back into the dust port. Set up. Away we go. You'll notice I keep flipping the workpiece for two reasons. Number one, I want to get the stuff that's getting a little bit of tear out on the other side. But over here, the sandpaper doesn't cover the metal platen all the way. It leaves a little bit here that is not getting sanded. So when I get to the corner, there's that little bit that won't get the sandpaper, but when I flip it over, the edge that wasn't getting it will now get it. Don't push too hard into the sandpaper. You don't need to. Let the sandpaper do all the work for you. Just keep it flat. Keep it flat on the table. Almost there. Keep the wood moving so it doesn't burn. That's it. We're done. That takes care of that one. Alright, I'm going to finish up these next two, and then we're going to get the other pieces together and glue the front and sides on. So we'll be back in a moment. So we finished all the interior sanding here. So now what we're going to do is get the front and back pieces. Before I go to the gluing, I just wanted to make a little quick note for you guys. This is 120 grit sandpaper, but it's not a new belt. It's a bit, well worn, let's say. So it's not quite a 120 anymore. This here is a 220, and it feels more like a 320. The 120 feels more like a 320. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to head over to the glue section. I'm going to set the camera up over there, and we'll continue on from there. So sit tight. We're going to begin the glue up now. I've already got the one side done, and this side we're going to put on. So I'm going to basically cyanoacrylate glue, same stuff that we used from before. Just in case if I need to do any little gap filling, I got my red sawdust that I've got over there, some from the Redheart, some from the ash, and a little bit of a mix, more of a mix over there. So we're going to take our glue, very gently put some on here, not to overdo it. And we put a nice bead on there, get up to the corner, bottom corner, and we just kind of put it on here, not too thick. Like I said earlier, I don't want too much in the way of a squeeze out. Okay, that should be good. Alright, and now piece number one here, you're going to see I got a little X there, that's where the drawer pull is going to be. So this is the outside, plus you can tell with the white China marker there. I'm going to hit this with just a little bit of a, I probably won't even need to. I'm going to want to line this up a little bit better. So I'm not going to use the accelerator. This will be pretty good on its own. I'm just going to line this up with my fingers. She's already tacking, so if I put the accelerator on there, I'm going to have absolutely no time to do this. So I got it tacked in place. I'm going to put my weight on it straight down, not forward because there's nothing supporting it here. So I want to put all my weight on the back here and then the sides. So I just go straight down on the sides, hold, try to get a little bit more of that middle, hold it for about a good 10 seconds, good pressure, and then we can let go. If I wanted to, I can take it to the vise over there and just clamp it a little harder. But I don't think I'm going to need to. It's holding pretty good. The lines are pretty decent. And when I just kind of did a little bit of a sanding, there, you're going to see that's a bit more of a shadow line. Once I sand that, that's going to be gone there. That's more of a shadow line because this, you might hear that. It's not absolutely level, but if you look at it like this, I mean, it's pretty close. It's not off by very much. So a little scuff sanding and that'll be good. Alright, we're going to get to gluing up the rest of these, and then it's off to put them into the case and then see how everything fits, and then we'll do a little bit of the sanding from the outside. So stick around and I'll be back in a moment. Alright, welcome back. We've got them all glued up together, so now when you take it out, this is what it looks like. Alright, we'll do all the sanding on the outside a little bit later. Right now, I just put them in for a little bit of a quick fit to see how it's going to look. And it's looking alright, you know, it's because of the kerf and because that there's nothing riding here, it's going to have that little bit of a gap. So that's normal with bandsaw boxes. You can put a little bit of something down there to try to bring this up, but it's so negligible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these out, and now what I got to do quickly is I am going to sand the back part of this that we cut off, because remember we cut 3/8 of an inch off the back here, and when I put it back on, it's got a little bit of a cup that happened to it from, I guess, the stresses in the wood or whatnot. So I'm gonna, and also because of all the kerf cuts that we did, it took just a little bit of material off each time. So when I put this down here, if I glue it back up, if I turn it like this, you're going to see it's got a little bit of a lip at the top. Let me do it like this. There, I'll hold it like this and come around and have a look. So you're going to see that there's a lip on the top there. So I can either get rid of that by sanding or by using the bandsaw. So we'll see how this goes. But right now I'm going to take this and put it on the sander just to flatten it out a little bit so we can get rid of that tiny little hump that's there. So we're going to turn on the sand machine. I got to turn on all my air cleaners and my dust collection, and yeah, away we go. So bear with me while I get everything turned on here. So we finished sanding, and I sanded this part on the inside as well so we can get a flusher mating going on here for when I glue it up. And then when we sand all this darker lines and stuff like that, they'll be a little bit more hidden. I'm hoping anyways. And then once we got this glued up, then I just have to deal with this top part here, get that taken care of. And then it's on to the actual, after this is sanded on the outside, get the drawer pulls made, glue the drawer pulls on, and then we'll put our finish on it. So, stick around, we'll get this glued up. I'm going to take it to the gluing table and you can watch me glue it up. Alright, what we're going to do is we're going to sand this now with the 220 sandpaper. The camera's kind of acting up on me, so I don't know what you kind of missed, but long story short, I'm just going to take this sandpaper and I'm going to sand the front down now. And I'm going to keep my hand here and put this here, so this way the paper won't crinkle when I try to sand. The closer I keep it to my hand, where the hand is holding the paper down, the more the paper is going to stay flat for me. So I'm going to take long strokes off the front here with 220 sandpaper, and I'm going to keep moving my hand because like if I keep my hand down here, there's not much pressure up here, right? I don't know if you can see it, but this front part here, the top, isn't making full contact with the sandpaper. So I got to keep moving my hand as I'm sanding. So I'll do a few strokes down here holding the bottom. Good long strokes, not too much downward pressure. I don't want to mess up my sandpaper. And then I'll move my hand up to the top here so I can get pressure down at the top so we can kind of keep this a little bit more even. I'll put a little bit more pressure, downward pressure with this hand on the back stroke than the front stroke, because it's just easier to push down and pull towards you than it is to push away from you, and you just a little bit more control over the workpiece that way. Slide my hand, gentle pressure, even strokes, make sure that the top and bottom get contact with the sandpaper. Okay, now what I'm going to do, because I've been using this part of the sandpaper so much, I'm going to flip this over now and I'm going to use this part of the sandpaper, make sure that my workpiece is going to stay, and make sure everything can access, including the foot. I have to watch the foot because it comes out, so I got to account for that. Alright, so we're going to continue on this side of the sandpaper now. Alright, let's have a look at that. Alright, the number 5 is gone. That feels good there. That's feeling flush. That feels good. That feels pretty good. I just got a little touch to get there, and then that's pretty much going to take care of it. Clean it up, and we should be good to go onto the drawers for them from there. So let's see here. Just a touch, not too much at all. Alright, and then the last, whatever, 10 strokes, I'm going to just have the weight of the workpiece on the sandpaper. I will not push down, I will not force it. I just want to do a light sanding now. Just like a touch-up sanding, really. That's all it really is at this point. Alright, that should be good. Now I'm going to clean this up because it kind of looks pretty messy with all the sawdust in there. So we're going to clean this up using the shop vac and clean up my work area here, and then we'll get started on these drawers there. So let's turn this loud thing on. Sweet. Alright, so that's feeling pretty smooth. That's pretty slick right there. So I'm not going to continue from there with more grits of sandpaper. This is actually feeling pretty good. These lines can't be helped. You're going to get them with bandsaw boxes. They're extremely difficult to hide. Alright, so let's get to this now. See if I can clean up my sanding paper here a little bit. There, that's good. Alright, on with our drawers. Now I'm not going to rough them up too much. This is just going to be a fairly gentle thing here, because the fronts are already pretty smooth. The backs, however, they're going to need a little bit more work. They're a little bit in rougher shape. Now the backs don't have to be absolutely perfect because they're the back of the drawer. But since I'm making it and I want it to be, you know, something to be proud of, I'm not going to just ignore it, that's for sure. Alright, so what I'm going to do, just so I don't get confused, because when I start sanding, these numbers and everything are going to come off. So what I'll do, on the bottom here, I'll put a little number 4. And this one's number 3, so I'll put a little number 3. And number 2. This way I don't goof up the order here from top. Oops, see, I'm sitting here talking, I'm not paying attention. 1, there. So this way we can keep track of which one is top, second, third, and bottom. Alright, so I'm going to get this on here and just do a very light back and forth. Don't need any machinery for this, just good old-fashioned hand sanding. Now you can do this too, go in circles, but as long as you finish up with, if the grain is running up and down like that, just going to finish with going up and down so we don't get any scratch lines. So when I put the oil on, we're not going to run into any issues. Alright, so we're going to keep checking it periodically. Okay, my pencil lines are gone. This is almost gone, so keep going until that number 1 is out of there. And then that'll be number 1 smooth enough and flat enough and good enough. I don't want to take too much stock off the drawer front or back because I don't want this to wind up sinking in too far. Yeah, we sanded the case down a little bit, so that's going to take a little bit of the depth away. But if I start sanding too much off of here, these drawers are going to go in further than I want them to go. And it's going to kind of make it look a little awkward. Then you might have to take steps, if it's really bad, to put something at the back to keep the drawers from going too far in. And that becomes just a bigger hassle than it's worth. Alright, we're almost there. Yeah, it seems like pushing forward works a little bit smoother than pushing backward. So for the last 10 strokes, just push down, push forward. I'm going to look at this in the light. I'm going to pretty much look at this in the light and see how we're doing. I'm going to clean this up. Make my little sweatshirt here a little bit more red in color. And I'm also looking at the scratch lines. See, when I'm looking at this, let's see if I can get behind the camera and do this. When I'm looking at this, I'm looking at it in the light and I'm looking at the reflection. I'm looking along the long grain here and I'm looking to see, when I'm looking up at the light, I'm looking to see if I see that little pencil line or any pencil lines or divots or whatever, or any scratches. I'm looking for the scratch pattern as well. You know, if it's all sideways and all roughed up looking, then I know I got to sand it more. If it's all uniform and even and quite smooth, I know I'm practically done. Now, there are some very fine lines that are sanding, lines that are in there, but they are going straight up and down, so that's one good thing. But in order to try to fix that, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to sand it, but I'm not putting any pressure down. So I'm going to try and take those sanding marks out just by gently pushing. Put it down and just push away from me. Pretty much just the weight of the wood itself. all I'm doing is just stabilizing it, keep it from rolling open and all over the place. So once I got that taken care of, I'm going to look again after I wipe it down, get all the dust off of there. Alright, and then I'm going to see if it makes a difference by going to this 320 grit. Should get this off in sand hills here. I'm going to change my direction with the sandpaper every once in a while so I have some fresh grit to work with. Alright, so I'm going to look at that. I'm going to see if these scratch lines are the same or any better. They're a little bit better, not by much, but still. Alright, this back part here, this is pretty rough. So I'm going to see how the 220 goes. I'm going to do quite a bit of this because I have to. Back and forth is going to take longer. If I go like this in circles, it'll actually flatten it a little bit quicker. I'm going to go to some new grit up here. I'm going to have to keep this stretched out. Don't push down hard, just push down with a little bit of pressure. Okay, and then once I want to check it, going backwards at this point or forwards doesn't seem to make too much of a difference. It's not chattering as I pull it. Alright, let's have a look at that. It's still pretty rough. So I'm going to switch to a bit of a heavier grit, and then we're going to continue. I'm going to finish off all these, and then I'll come back, and then we'll get the next step going from there. So hang tight. The sanding is finished. We've got things. I didn't want to sand too much of the outside because I don't want to change the shape too much of the drawers, because then you're going to have these huge gaps in the case. So I didn't want to do too much outside sanding, but I did just touch up so it's not so rough. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to use this African Blackwood, and this Blackwood, let me get into the camera here a little better and zoom out. There. So this Blackwood, I'm going to make the pulls out of this, and there's already a crack right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the bandsaw, and I'm going to cut pretty much along the crack here, because my pulls are going to be around this size anyways. I don't want them very big. I want them to be not so much a prominent thing, I want them to be more of an accent, but big enough that you can actually get your fingers on there to actually pull the drawer out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rip this down, probably stop somewhere in and around here, and then I'm going to try to square it up, and then I'm going to try to make pulls from it from there. So I'm going to take this over to the bandsaw and cut up this Blackwood, and I'm hoping that this works out, because if it doesn't, then I got to think of another option. Alright, stay tuned. Alright, we're set up on the bandsaw here. So I'm going to turn on my dust collection, fire up the bandsaw, adjust my my guard here, and be a little bit lower so it's a bit safer, and then make that cut. So here we go. Turned out to be a pretty decent cut, so I'm not sure how well you can see that on the camera there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another cut. I decided not to stop the cut and then back out and then make the cut this way. I decided what I'll do is I'm going to make a cut coming this way, and then this piece that's left over, I can use it for some kind of inlay work or something later on. I can still use it as a full piece. So what I'm going to wind up doing here is I'm going to make this just a little bit wider, not much, barely noticeable, but it'll be more noticeable when you put your fingers on it to go and pull on the drawer. Alright, we're going to fire this back up, make the next cut, and then we're going to see what we can do. Don't forget your push stick. Okay, so out of this material here, let me get behind the camera so I can see. This material here, this is going to be pretty much the base of our knobs for the bandsaw box. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to square it up. I'm going to make a cut. Let me back out of here so you can see better. So I'm going to wind up making a cut somewhere around here, square this up, and then I'm going to I think what I'll do is I'll chamfer the ends or something like that and see how that goes. So I'm hoping it turns out nice. So I'm going to put you on pause for a moment. I'm going to head over to the other bench there and get set up.